Hello, the best. In the first part of 30 years of gaming, I briefly told you how the gaming industry arose and what path it went through in the process of formation in the first few decades. Thank you for the warm welcome to this series. For those who haven't watched it yet, the link is in the description. Be sure to look. The video turned out to be very interesting. Well, today we will begin to analyze the gaming industry by year, starting from 1992. Don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this video on your social networks. Let's go! The beginning of the 90s was the era of the technological revolution in the gaming industry. Having survived a serious crisis, the gaming industry has again reached and even scaled up its former merits. More powerful microprocessors allowed developers to use more complex algorithms, and more developers used 3D graphics in their products. This led to a massive transition from cartridges and floppy disks to CD-ROM optical discs, which had already been tested in musical production by that time. One such disk contained an average of about 700 megabytes of data and had a fast, in comparison with floppy disks, data readability. In the future, such a carrier could fit the game along with the soundtrack, which was very cool for the early 90s. The transition to a new medium led to the release of new devices capable of reading games and media from CDs. Philips releases the CDI Multimedia Home Console. Sega releases the Sega CD add-on for the Genesis in North America. TTI releases the Turbo Duo, an updated version of the TurboGrafx 16 with built-in CD-ROM drive. Even JVC releases the Wonder Mega Console, which is a symbiote of Mega Drive and Sega CD. Nintendo, in turn, launches a Super Nintendo Entertainment System in Europe and released a first-party light gun peripheral named Nintendo Scope to it. The peripheral consists of two devices, the wireless light gun itself, called the transmitter, and a receiver that connects to the second controller port of the Super NES console. Everything was clear that in the coming years the world is waiting for unprecedented changes in graphics and game design. So what 20 games have become the most popular and loved in those years? The 20 best games of 1992 are opened by a plot offshoot of Wolfenstein 3D called Spear of Destiny. During the development of Wolfenstein 3D, Mark Rain, who was then the acting president of ID Software, sold the draft Wolfenstein 3D retail version to FormGen. It was subsequently decided to be released as a standalone episode named Spear of Destiny. Spear of Destiny is a first-person shooter and prequel to Wolfenstein 3D. The game was developed by ID Software and released in 1992 by FormGen for the MS-DOS operating system. In the episode Spear of Destiny, on the orders of Adolf Hitler, the Nazis steal a legendary artifact from Versailles, the Spear of Destiny. The task of William B.J. Blazkowicz, the main character of the game, is to return the artifact. Blazkowicz infiltrates the Nazi fortress, breaks through the Nazis, defeats Transgross, Barnacle Wilhelm, Ubermutant, and Death Knight, the bosses of the episode, and at the end meets with the main boss, Angel of Death, and returns the spear. Spear of Destiny is divided into 3 episodes, each consisting of 21 levels, 2 of which are secret. The game uses pseudo 3D, levels are made in a 3D perspective, and enemies and objects are 2D sprites drawn from several pre-selected viewing angles. The player is confronted by armed Nazi soldiers, mutants, and guard dogs who attack the protagonist if he enters their line of sight. In addition, some types of opponents react to the sounds of shots. Spear of Destiny has the ability to stealthily eliminate enemies. Every 5th episode there is a fight with the boss, a particularly strong opponent. Landing in 19th place is an action-adventure based on the Star Trek universe called Star Trek: 25th Anniversary. It was developed and published by Interplay Productions in 1992, based on the Star Trek universe. The game follows the various missions of James T. Kirk and his crew on board the US Enterprise. The game is split into a series of episodes, each opening with an in-game message from Starfleet Command. It usually begins with ship battles before the game transitions into a third-person adventure game. Over the course of several combat scenes, the player controls the Enterprise in combat against enemies in space. Interplay later offered a patch to make these scenes optional. The gameplay is divided into 2 main modes, the view from the main bridge and the third-person mode when the away team moves to the planet or space station. Controls on the bridge are shared between crew members. For example, Montgomery Scott allows access to the shield and power, Pavel Chekhov controls navigation, and Hikaru Sulu controls the ship's orbit. The away team always consists of Kirk, Spock, and Leonard McCoy, as well as one of the 8 redshirts, many of which can die during the mission. The player interacts with these modes using a point-and-click interface with the mouse. The game was originally released in 1992 for PC on 3.5 floppy disks, with a later CD release adding enhanced sound effects and voice acting from the original series. Following a deal with CBS, Star Trek 25th Anniversary was subsequently re-released on the GOG.com distribution network with additional German and French subtitles on May 7, 2015. Shortly thereafter, Interplay Entertainment also re-released Star Trek 25th Anniversary on Steam, albeit only for Microsoft Windows and without subtitles.
Greetings, my children. I can barely imagine that you have come so far.
18th place goes to Flashback Platformer. Flashback is developed by the French company Delphine Software and is recognized in the Guinness Book of Records as the best-selling French game in history. The game featured smooth character animations, hand-drawn backgrounds, pseudo-3D animation cutscenes, and looked very advanced for its time. To the creation, designers used the rotoscoping technique of frame-by-frame manual image processing. Another World and Prince of Persia games used the same technique. Flashback takes place in 2142. The main character is Conrad Behart, an employee of the Galactic Bureau of Investigation, who accidentally uncovers a conspiracy of aliens masquerading as people. He is kidnapped and his memory is erased, but then Hart manages to escape. The protagonist's adventures begin in the wild jungles of Titan, where he comes to his senses after a glider crash. Soon he finds a holocube with a message from himself recommending that he go to New Washington, a city on the same planet, to a friend who will help in further investigation. In combat, Hart uses a pistol with infinite ammo, a temporary force shield, as well as rolls and sneaks. Acrobatics in the game is similar to Prince of Persia. Conrad can jump standing still and on the run, hang on his hands and climb ledges, and also somersault. Rotoscoping technology makes the animation very realistic. A feature of the game is a significant quest element, including conversations with many characters and solving various issues, obtaining the necessary items and using them. The plot of the game has much in common with such famous science fiction films as Total Recall, They Live, The Running Man, Blade Runner, and Alien. The legendary platformer Metroid 2 Return of Samus breaks into 17th place. It is the second game in the Metroid series developed by the Nintendo R and D1 for Game Boy. In Metroid 2, the developers first added large round shoulders to Samus's Varia suit, and since then, along with the Morph Ball, this sweet element has become one of the most prominent features of the series and has appeared in all subsequent games. 2 new weapons have been added to the game, the Spazer, which shoots 3 laser beams, and the Plasma Beam, which destroys most normal enemies. Also introduced in Metroid 2 is the Space Jump Suit upgrade, which allows the character to jump indefinitely by pushing off in the air, allowing the character to reach previously unreachable areas. The Morph Ball from the first part received additional improvements, Spider Ball and Bouncing Ball. The first allows you to climb walls, the second allows you to jump in Morph Ball mode. According to the plot of Part 2, the Galactic Federation, concerned about the events on the planet SR-388, sends Samus Aran on a special mission to destroy all Metroids on their home planet so that the space pirates can no longer use them for their sinister purposes. On this planet, Samus discovers an ancient underground complex hidden under a lake. As the player explores the caves of the planet, the player will encounter various forms of Metroids, ranging from the fetal Medusa to the Queen Metroid. 16th position of my rating goes to the 6th part of the King's Quest series called Air Today, Gone Tomorrow. The game is developed by Sierra Entertainment under the direction of Roberta Williams and Jane Jensen. Many reviewers considered the game to be the best in the series. Its main features were a 3D intro video created by Chronos Digital Entertainment and professional voice acting for the characters.
Good day, I'm Alexander.
To control the game, the player uses a graphical panel located at the top of the screen with buttons that allow you to perform actions. This game is the second in the series to use a similar interface. All previous games in the series used to require the player to type commands and actions on the keyboard instead of selecting them on the screen. Most of the gameplay is occupied by solving puzzles. Among them are logical tasks and interaction with characters through dialogues or using collected items. Solving problems in the game usually requires moving between the islands of the game world using a magic map. The plot of the game is a continuation of the events shown in the finale of King's Quest V. The son of King Graham, Prince Alexander, sets off in search of the beautiful Princess Cassima, daughter of the King of the Green Isles, but suffers a shipwreck at the very destination of the journey. Now Alexander has to defeat his evil rival, the Vizier Alhazred, and win the heart of Cassima.
Good day, maid. My name is Alexander. How do you do?
Breaking through the crowds of enemies, Contra 3: The Alien Wars runs to the 15th line. This is the third game in the Contra series, which was released by Konami in 1992 for the SNES. The plot of the story is that in 2636, the aliens, who are defeated by the Contra fighters, begin a full-scale invasion of Earth. 6 months later, the heroes of past battles, Bill and Lance, land in a ruined city captured by aliens. The two heroes again have to restore justice. You can play together with friend via split screen. In the game, you can move not only on foot, but also with the help of vehicles. Most levels have a side view, 2 levels have a top view. The level design varies from one to another. The earlier ones were made more interesting. The later ones were made worse, less detail, fewer ordinary enemies. Fights are mainly focused on heavy opponents, bosses. In Contra 3: The Alien Wars, the player can have 2 types of weapons, switching between them as needed. It is possible to shoot from 2 barrels at once. To do this, hold L+R and the hero will stand in a heroic pose in levels with a side view or start spinning, and shooting at the same time in levels with a top view. If you completely complete the game, it will start from the very beginning, but at a more difficult level. The 14th place is occupied by one of the best survival horror, Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark was created by Frederick Renal and developed and published by Infogrames in 1992 for DOS personal computers. The game is considered the ancestor of 3D survival horror games. The hero of the game finds himself in the Derceto Manor, full of various monsters, traps, and riddles. Some opponents can be dealt with or without weapons, others require an individual approach. A number of enemies are fundamentally indestructible, so it is better not to meet them. While wandering around the house, the player also finds books and other documents that tell about Derceto and the events that preceded the start of the game. The character can explore different places and interact with certain objects. The inventory has a weight limit, so it should be unloaded from time to time, getting rid of unnecessary items. Unlike other parts of the game and most representatives of the genre, Alone in the Dark is only partly linear. The rooms of the house can be explored in any order. On the contrary, the final part is absolutely linear. Alone in the Dark has had a major impact on the survival horror genre. In particular, Shinji Mikami, while working on Resident Evil, paid attention to the mechanics of Alone in the Dark. In addition, 2 feature films based on the game series were made. In 2009, Empire magazine included Alone in the Dark in its 100 Greatest Games of All Time list. The game Batman Returns lands on the 13th place of my top on the Wings of the Night. The game follows the storyline of the movie Batman Returns. Batman must fight 2 new criminals, the Penguin and Catwoman, which threaten the peace in Gotham. The game takes the player through 7 scenes featured in the film. Each scene has a boss fight that Batman must win in order to proceed to the next scene. Various members of the Red Triangle Circus gang attack Batman throughout the game. Batman has a number of weapons and moves at his disposal, including the Batarang. A number of levels are 2-dimensional platform levels as opposed to the majority of the pseudo-3D levels where freer movement is permitted. The DOS version of the game, published by Konami, differs considerably from the other versions in that it was not primarily an action game, rather an adventure game. The CD version of the game features a number of 3D racing levels that took advantage of the graphics hardware provided by the Sega CD unit, plus improved music in the form of CD audio with a number of animations featuring original artwork. Twelfth place under the thunderous exclamations of fanfare goes to Super Star Wars. Super Star Wars is an action video game developed by LucasArts and Sculptured Software for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Super Star Wars generally follows the plot of Star Wars, although some allowances were made to adapt the story to suit an action game. For example, instead of simply buying C-3PO and R2-D2 from the Jawas, Luke Skywalker must fight his way to the top of a Jawa sandcrawler while leaping from a series of moving conveyor belts. Brief cutscenes between levels tell an abbreviated version of the film's story through written text. Later stages allow the player to control Smuggler and pilot Han Solo or Chewbacca the Wookiee. The game also features several vehicle-based levels in which the player takes control of an X-Wing or a land speeder. Most of the stages consist of run-and-gun and platforming gameplay, with several different upgrades available to the standard blaster weapon. Luke can also wield a lightsaber after acquiring it from Obi-Wan Kenobi. The end of the game has players reenacting Luke's Death Star trench run to destroy the Death Star, with Darth Vader confronting the player in his TIE Advanced X1. Super Star Wars was awarded Best Action Adventure Game of 1992 by Electronic Gaming Monthly, as well as Best Movie to Game. IGN ranked Super Star Wars 83rd on their top 100 SNES games of all time. The CD version of the game features a number of 3D racing levels that took advantage of the graphics hardware provided by the Sega CD unit, plus improved music in the form of CD audio with a number of animations featuring original artwork. 11th place and a full harvester of spice goes to Dune 2, The Building of a Dynasty. Dune 2, The Building of a Dynasty is a real-time strategy video game based on the novel Dune by Frank Herbert, developed by Westwood Studios, and released in 1992. Dune 2 is one of the first games in this genre, having a significant impact on its development as a whole. The game takes place on the planet Arrakis, in the sands of which there are deposits of a valuable substance, spice. The player assumes the role of commander of the armies of one of the three galactic houses, Atreides, Ordos, and Harkonnen. The war begins when ships with the armies of all three houses arrive on Arrakis. In the opening missions, the goals are to rebuild and fortify a base in the unoccupied territory of Arrakis, collect spice, and defeat the first enemies. Later, when there are no neutral territories left, all three houses collide at the sector borders and divide Arrakis among themselves. The player will have to storm and capture enemy territories. When the player captures Arrakis completely, the other two enemy factions unite against him. With each new mission, new types of troops and buildings appear in the player's arsenal. Only by the 8th mission player gets a full arsenal. According to Westwood Studios, Dune 2 was a commercial success, with sales exceeding 250,000 units worldwide by November 1996.
Reporting. Acknowledged.
Before we move on to the top 10 of our 1992 top games, let's take a look at other games released this year that are worthy of mention. Lunar: The Silver Star, Snatcher CDR Romantic, Darkwing Duck, Die Hard 2: Die Harder, Desert Strike: Return to the Gulf, Dragon Quest V: Hand of the Heavenly Bride, Ultima 7: The Black Gate, Star Control 2, Road Rash 2, Splatterhouse 2, Bucky O'Hare, Shining Force: The Legacy of Great Intention. Everyone got a dose of nostalgia, and now to the top 10 best games of 1992. The honor of opening the top 10 games of 1992 goes to a cute and quirky game, Kirby's Dream Land. Kirby's Dream Land is a side-scrolling action platformer. Kirby's main method of attack is to inhale enemies and objects into his mouth, after which the player can choose to swallow or spit them out as a star-shaped projectile attack. In addition to running and jumping, Kirby can fly by inflating himself with a mouthful of air and flapping his arms. The game was designed by Masahiro Sakurai in his debut game, who intended it to be a simple game that could be easy to pick up and play by those unfamiliar with action games. For more advanced players, he offered additional optional challenges such as an unlockable hard mode and the ability to edit Kirby's maximum HP and starting number of lives. Kirby's Dream Land is set in the fictional country of Dreamland, which is located on a tiny star-shaped planet far away from Earth, named Planet Popstar in later games. The Dreamlanders are a very peaceful and carefree people that use their magical sparkling stars to play and work among the heavens. One night, under the cover of darkness, the gluttonous King Dedede and his minions swoop down from his castle on Mount Dedede and steal all the food in Dreamland, as well as the sparkling stars, which the king distributes among his minions. Without the sparkling stars, the Dreamlanders can no longer harvest food and begin to go hungry. As the residents are discussing what to do, a spry little boy named Kirby flies in on the spring breeze and volunteers to defeat King Dedede and retrieve the food and stars. Upon successfully doing so, he uses the magic of the sparkling stars to transform into a hot air balloon and return the king's stolen food back to the people of Dreamland. In Japan, Hoshi no Kirby topped the Famitsu sales charts from May 1992 to June 1992. In the United States, Kirby's Dream Land topped Babbage's Game Boy sales chart in October 1992. The game sold more than 1 million units worldwide by March 1993. Fantastic and difficult Mega Man 5 is on the 9th position of my top. Mega Man 5 is an action platform video game developed by Capcom for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Mega Man 5 takes place during the 21st century, about 2 months after the events of Mega Man 4, when the mad scientist Dr. Wily once again attempted to take over the world. Proto Man, secret brother and once ally to the world's greatest hero Mega Man, leads an army of robots in a series of destructive attacks on the world. To cripple the world's defenders, he kidnaps his own creator, the genius scientist Dr. Light. Mega Man wonders why Proto Man is doing this, but with little choice left, he sets out to stop him, assisted by Beat, a robot bird gifted to him by Dr. Cossack. Gameplay revolves around the player using the central character Mega Man to run, jump, and shoot his way through a set of stages. If the player takes damage, Mega Man's life meter can be refilled by picking up energy capsules scattered about each level or from fallen enemies. Each stage ends with a boss battle with a Robot Master. Destroying that Robot Master lets the player copy its special master weapon, which can be toggled and used throughout the remainder of the game. Mega Man 5 was met with a positive critical reception for its graphics, difficulty, and music, while receiving criticism for its lack of innovation in its plot or gameplay. Like previous games in the series, Mega Man 5 was remade for PlayStation in Japan. It later appeared on mobile phones and become part of game collections, including Mega Man Anniversary Collection. Kicking down the door, the greatest fighting game Street Fighter II Champion Edition comes to 8th place. Street Fighter II Champion Edition is a fighting game released by Capcom in 1992. It was launched for arcades and converted to several video game consoles. It is the first updated version of Street Fighter II and part of the Street Fighter series. The gameplay is consistent with the Street Fighter II sub-series, with several changes from the original World Warrior Edition. The fighting techniques of the 8 main characters from the original game were further balanced for competitive play. In addition to the 8 main characters, the 4 Shadaloo bosses, which are Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and M. Bison, are now playable characters. The Shadaloo bosses were toned down considerably from the previous iterations, but remain relatively strong compared to the standard 8 fighters. The returning 8 main characters' techniques and priorities were further balanced for competition between different characters. Ryu's and Ken's common fighting techniques were further differentiated. In World Warrior, both players are not allowed to choose the same character. This restriction has been eliminated in Champion Edition, allowing for mirror matches. Minor graphical changes include color improvements, particularly for background stages. The portraits for all the characters and endings of some of the returning characters were redrawn. Street Fighter II Champion Edition's worldwide arcade earnings exceeded $2.3 billion in gross revenue. This makes it one of the top 3 highest grossing arcade games of all time, after Pac-Man and Space Invaders. 7th place goes to the 5th part of the Final Fantasy game series, immortal to this day. Final Fantasy V was first published exclusively in Japan, but in 1999, after being ported to the PlayStation, it was translated into English and appeared in other regions of the world. The events of Final Fantasy V take place in 3 fictional worlds, native to the characters, a parallel one, and a third, formed after the merger of the first 2. In ancient times, the world existed as one, but 1,000 years before the events of the game, its integrity was compromised due to a substance known as the Void. It was created by an evil magician named Inuo. With the help of 12 legendary weapons, people managed to defeat Inuo, but the Void turned out to be indestructible. To cope with it, people divided 8 elemental crystals into 4, which led to the split of the world into 2 parts and sealed the void in the space between them. For a long time, both worlds existed in harmony, supported by elemental crystals, until one day an evil spirit known as Exodes, the main antagonist of the game, was born in the Forest of Moor, who intended to destroy everything that exists. However, a group of heroes called the Four Dawn Warriors defeated him using the power of the same elemental crystals. Harmony reigned again, but, as it turned out, only for 30 years. In addition to the main storyline, the game features some additional side quests that allow you to get better weapons, armor, etc. Final Fantasy V was the first game in the series to feature secret bosses that were an order of magnitude more powerful than the final one, and locations that needed to be completed in a limited amount of time, even taking into account the time spent fighting. If the timer reaches 0, the game ends immediately, similarly to the death of all characters in the battle. Depending on which characters survived the final boss fight, the game's ending varies. On the 6th place of my top is the furious beat-em-up Streets of Rage 2. This is the second game in the Streets of Rage series of games, the sequel to Streets of Rage. A year has passed since the events of Streets of Rage. To celebrate their victory over the mysterious Mr. X and his syndicate, Adam Hunter, Axel Stone, and Blaze Fielding met at their favorite nightclub and spent time reminiscing about their battle with Mr. X and his organization. The next morning, Axel received a call from Eddie Skate Hunter, Adam's younger brother. Returning from school, Eddie was shocked to find his house in ruins and discover his brother missing. Attached to the front door was a picture of Adam chained to the wall at Mr. X's feet. Realizing that Mr. X and his syndicate have returned to exact revenge on them, Skate and Axel waste no time in telling Blaze about the unexpected events that have taken place. Blaze is determined to help Axel defeat Mr. X and save Adam. Accompanied by Skate and Axel's friend, a professional wrestler named Max, Axel and Blaze hit the road. Their path leads away from the city to the deserted island of Mr. X, where his residence is located. Although the gameplay of Streets of Rage 2 is very similar to that of its predecessor, a lot has been updated and improved. The biggest change has been to the special attack, which used to call a police car and deal damage to all enemies currently on screen. Now a special attack is available to each character individually and allows you to deal more damage to the enemy at the cost of a small decrease in the level of life. Enemies have also been reworked. All enemies now have a life bar, names, and their own fighting moves. The weapons that can be picked up during the game have also been changed. The characters themselves also acquired some characteristic features. In addition to their individual traits and movement patterns, the characters received a strong non-power down hit by double-clicking the movement direction button and the punch button. All the heroes of the game have been redesigned and received their own individual characteristics and qualities that are unique to them. The top 5 games of 1992 are opened by the thrilling adventure Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis is an action-adventure video game released by LucasArts in 1992. The gameplay is based on the SCUMM system developed by Eric Wilmender, Brad P. Taylor, and Vince Lee and uses point-and-click mode. The player explores a fixed scene by making contact with characters and various objects, using a computer mouse or keyboard to indicate actions, take, use, and talk to. The plot itself is quite classic for games and movies about the adventures of an archaeologist. Year 1939, eve of World War II, Dr. Henry Indiana Jones, at the request of a certain Mr. Smith, looks for a mysterious idol in the Barnett College Museum. But when Indy shows the find to Smith, he, threatening with a gun, steals an exhibit. In the ensuing scuffle, Smith manages to break free and escape with the figurine. Indy and Marcus discover that their new acquaintance is actually Klaus Koerner, and that he is a Nazi German agent interested in excavating in Iceland, where Indiana and his former colleague Sophia Hapgood once worked on an archaeological expedition. The player in the role of Dr. Indiana Jones will have to untie the knot of events, mysteries, and mystical secrets and prevent the plans of Nazi scientists. At certain points, the player is given the opportunity to use various modes in which there are various puzzles and scenes. The team path, Indiana Jones is accompanied by the character Sophia Hapgood, who assists throughout the game. The Wits path contains a large set of complex puzzles. The Fists path is mainly focused on action scenes and related story paths. The release of the game was accompanied by unanimous approval. Game Informer, Computer Game Review, Games Magazine, and Game Players Magazine named it the best adventure game of the year. Based on 6 reviews, Game Rankings gave the game a 90%. Nearly 1 million copies of the game have been sold across all platforms. A review in Dragon Magazine said it was one of the must-buy games and gave it 5 stars.
I'm the staff archaeologist. Got any buckets?
What do you want with a bucket?
I'll let Sophia show you.
Indy!
Nice work.
The 4th place in my top goes to the shooter on steroids, Wolfenstein 3D. Wolfenstein 3D was released on May 5, 1992 for the DOS platform and subsequently ported to various platforms. The player assumes the role of WWII Allied Intelligence Officer William Joseph B.J. Blazkowicz, who is trying to escape from his place of detention, Castle Wolfenstein, and performs a series of sabotage missions against the Nazi regime. In each level, the player must fight against Nazi soldiers, dogs, and mutants using a knife and firearms, as well as get to the elevator or defeat the final boss. Wolfenstein 3D was ID Software's first major project since Commander Keen. In mid-1991, ID Software programmer John Carmack experimented with a fast pseudo 3D game engine, which was used by the team in the games Hovertank 3D, which I talked about in the last video, and Catacomb 3D, subsequently used as prototypes for Wolfenstein 3D. After the company decided to move from the family visual style of the Commander Keen series to a more adult and gritty style, another company programmer, John Romero, suggested that they remake the 1981 Castle Wolfenstein game as a fast-paced action game. He and game designer Tom Hall developed a fast and brutal, unlike other games of the time, version of the game based on the Carmack engine. The artist was Adrian Carmack, and the composer was Bobby Prince. The game was released by Apogee Software in 2 mission packs, each consisting of 3 episodes. Wolfenstein 3D was distributed on a shareware model, where the first episode was free and fueled interest in buying the rest of the subsequent ones. Wolfenstein 3D received critical acclaim and magazine awards in various categories, and sales were estimated at 200,000 copies by the end of 1993. The game helped popularize the first-person shooter genre, became a model for fast-paced action games, set the technological performance benchmark for subsequent games in the genre, and demonstrated the viability of a shareware distribution model. The 3rd place and the bronze medal of my top is taken by the perky and funny Super Mario Kart. Super Mario Kart is an arcade racing game developed by Nintendo EAD for the SNES and released on August 27, 1992. Super Mario Kart was produced by Japanese game designer Shigeru Miyamoto. The game uses the Mode 7 video mode first used in F-Zero. Its feature is the ability to rotate and scale the layer with the background image, which allows you to achieve the effect of pseudo 3D graphics. 8 playable characters are available to the player: Mario, Luigi, Princess Peach, Yoshi, Bowser, Donkey Kong Jr., Koopa Troopa, and Toad. At the same time, the acceleration, maximum speed, and control of the map of each of the characters are differentiated. Screen is divided into 2 parts. The upper part displays the gameplay itself, and the lower part shows a simplified view of the track with the position of the participants on it. In 2-player mode, the bottom and top of the screen show gameplay from the first and second players, respectively. By running into images with question marks on the track, it is possible to collect various improvements for the kart and build traps for rivals. Each of the computer-controlled characters also have their own unique abilities that they can use to gain an advantage in the race. Super Mario Kart marked the beginning of a whole subgenre of computer games, kart racing. In 1994, Sega released the game Sonic Drift, where characters from the Sonic the Hedgehog series competed on karts. In the same year, Ubisoft released the Street Racer game, which could be played by up to 8 people at the same time. Subsequently, other games came out that were more or less similar to Super Mario Kart. Super Mario Kart has become one of the most commercially successful games on the SNES. In total, the game has sold approximately 8 million copies, making it the third best-selling SNES game. Critics praised the game's graphics, with the Nintendo Magazine system in 1992 calling the game's graphics one of the best on the SNES. The cumulative score of the game on GameRankings is 94%. For a silver medal and second place in the top of the best games of 1992, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is in a hurry to us. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a platformer video game in the Sonic the Hedgehog series developed by Sonic Team in collaboration with its division Sega Technical Institute. The game was released by Sega for the Sega Mega Drive Genesis game console at the end of November 1992 and was later ported to various game platforms of several generations and included in dozens of compilations. According to the plot of the game, the villain Dr. Robotnik arrives on the Western Island in order to get mystical stones, Chaos Emeralds, in order to feed their energy to his space station called Death Egg to capture the world. Sonic meets the fox Miles Prower, nicknamed Tails, and they become best friends. The main characters are going to break Robotnik's insidious plans to take over the world. The player has to go through 11 game zones, which, in turn, are divided into 2 acts and filled with certain robotic enemies called Badnik. The player character can attack enemies by rolling into a spiky ball, while jumping, or by using the new spin dash, accelerating in place and attacking with a high-speed roll attack. In Sonic the Hedgehog 2, there is an opportunity to play for 2 characters, Sonic himself and Tails the Fox, controlled from the second gamepad. Their movements are identical and do not differ from each other. Tails can act as an assistant to the first player. He can kill enemies and collect rings, which are added to the Hedgehog. If the second gamepad is not connected, artificial intelligence forces the character to simply follow Sonic and repeat his movements. The game options allow you to refuse to accompany Tails or, on the contrary, remove Sonic, making the Fox the main character. The game received high marks from critics. According to GameRankings, the average score for the original was 92%. Over 6 million copies of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 have been sold worldwide, making it one of the best-selling titles on the Mega Drive Genesis console. And the gold medal and the title of the best game of 1992 according to the NRD channel goes to the phenomenal, brutal and colorful fighting game called Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is a traditional 2D fighting game. The game is centered around a brutal tournament called Mortal Kombat hosted by the evil sorcerer Shang Tsung. The game takes place in Earthrealm, where a tournament is being held on Shang Tsung's island, on which 7 of its locations serve as stages in the game. The introduction to Mortal Kombat explains that Shang Tsung was banished to Earthrealm 500 years previously and, with the help of the monstrous Goro, is able to seize control of the Mortal Kombat tournament in an attempt to doom the realm. For 500 years straight, Goro has been undefeated in the tournament and won 9 consecutive tournaments. If Goro wins again, Shao Kahn, Emperor of Outworld, will be allowed to take Earthrealm. In order to prevent this, a new generation of warriors must challenge Goro. The player receives information about the characters and biographies displayed during the Attract mode. The bulk of the game's backstory and lore was only told in a comic book, but some additional information about the characters and their motivations for entering the tournament is received upon completion of the game with each character. Key aspects of the Mortal Kombat series have been introduced to the game, including a unique control system and bloody finishing moves, Fatality. The character is controlled by pressing the appropriate buttons. By default, these are the top punch, top kick, bottom punch, bottom kick, block, and joystick D-pad to move the character. Depending on distance and position, the player can perform uppercuts, roundhouse kicks, backhands, and sweeps. In Mortal Kombat, the style of conducting special moves has also changed. Unlike most games of the time, which use circular rotations of the joystick to perform such moves, followed by pressing the strike button, Mortal Kombat practically did not use joystick rotations, and some special moves were performed without pressing the strike button. The game first introduced the concept of juggling, which became so popular that it was subsequently implemented in a number of other games, and not just fighting games. The principle of juggling is that while the fighter is in the air, he becomes uncontrollable from the player's side and is open to enemy attacks until he lands. In order to use this opportunity, the player needs to tear his opponent's fighter off the ground and keep him in the air with a series of blows. Mortal Kombat was one of many violent video games that came into prominence between 1992 and 1993, generating controversy among parents and public officials. The legislators were especially concerned with the realistic replica of human figures in games as opposed to cartoonish characters in other violent games such as Eternal Champions or Time Killers. The result of the hearings was that the entertainment software industry was given 1 year to form a working rating system, or the federal government would intervene and create its own system. Eventually, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or ESRB, was conceived, requiring all video games to be rated and for these ratings to be placed on the game's packaging. Which games from 1992 do you remember the most? Write in the comments. It will be interesting for me to remember it. And this was the top 20 games of 1992 on the NRD channel. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Next time we will remember the best games of 1993. I wish everyone not to grow old and to play their favorite games. See you in the next video. Bye bye.